Well, good morning. My name is Dean Ward, and I serve as the lead pastor of the River Church. And I am so grateful that you have chosen to join in with us here today for our online sermon. And I just want to give you a heads up. Today we are wrapping up our sermon series just simply called Future Family. And in this series, we've been looking at some of the teaching that Andy Stanley had in a series he did in 2012. And their North Point Ministries is so committed to sharing resources and helping churches that we felt like this information was crucial to be able to pass on to our congregation in this series that we do in February on family. And so they have a special website available for all of us to enjoy. Now, this is a 4-week series here at the River, but North Point and Andy Stanley did it as a 6-week series. So you're kind of getting ripped off of 2 great message experiences, and so I wanted to give you an opportunity to see them. So they provided this website, futurefamily.org. It's there on the screen, futurefamily.org, available to you so that you can catch all of the sermons. And they have videos of all the sermons. And Andy Stanley's a much better teacher than I am, so you can even see better sermon than what I preached the first 3 weeks. And today's sermon is just kind of combining some of the last 3 messages that he spoke, but also drawing from a scripture in Psalm chapter 27. And today's sermon is just simply called The Echo, where we are looking at how our legacy echoes into not just our children's lives, but future generations as well. We're going to look at and celebrate the legacy that you and I are called to have with our lives that lives beyond us. And to begin, we thought it would be appropriate to film outside of Mogi's restaurant here in Lower Borough. As many of you know, this past December, just 2 months ago, my wife's third cousin, Dave McGill, better known as Mogi, was murdered right outside his restaurant here. They reopened a month later at the end of January, and business is booming. So I want to thank all of you who have chosen to come out here and support all that they are doing here at Mogi's restaurant. And one of the things I wanted to note about Dave McGill is one time he was talking to me because he would attend the River from time to time, and he would explain how different he is now than how he used to be. And for those of you that knew Mogi back in the day, you would say amen. But he would phrase it like this: I used to be blank, but then I grew up. So whatever he was referring to, I used to be this way, but then I grew up. And Mogi was a believer in Jesus. He was saved. Mogi was not perfect. There are many things about Mogi that people could point out and say, yeah, what about this, and what about that, and what about this? But one thing that Mogi left behind is a legacy of serving and helping. This man served and helped and blessed others in tremendous ways, many of which you will never hear about. You would have to have trusted, confidential, private conversations with his closest friends to be able to hear some of the ways that Mogi helped and blessed and served others. Now, he did it publicly as well, with his support of our officers and the Black the Blue events, with the support of blessing kids and families during Christmas time. He raised money, championed causes that blessed and sustained this community, especially the lives and families of police officers. And so I celebrate the legacy that Dave McGill has left. and how his legacy is not just continuing and echoing through his children's lives, through Kelsey and Connor here at McGill's, and through Patrick, his son, out in Las Vegas, and his entrepreneurial spirit and business that he has, but how Mogi's legacy continues through many and will continue through many generations. Now, you may also be a little stressed out that I'm preaching on the hood of a vehicle. Well, let me just remind you, this is my Tahoe that I bought from my uncle after a tree fell on it and busted out the windshield and the back window and the sunroof and smashed the body all on the top, but mechanically it was perfect. Well, we got a new windshield, new rear window, put a piece of plexiglass and glued it over the sunroof, and left the dented hood as it was. And people will tell me, Dean, don't ever fix your hood on your Tahoe, because that's how I know it's you coming at me. And it's funny, when I'm driving toward people in a crowding parking lot and they see my smashed in hood and fenders that are dented, they like dive out of the way. They think I'm a crazy driver and about to hit them. And so it has that advantage as well. So I've kind of started the theme of today's message, Future Family. We're wrapping up this series. The Echo is the sermon title, and we're talking about legacy. Now, there's a passage that Mark and I wanted to draw your attention to in Psalm 27, verses 1 through 5. And we want to talk about how your legacy impacts your future family. The series is called Future Family, and you may be wondering why in the first 3 sermons. Well, why isn't this called Present Family? Well, today's sermon is why it's not called Present Family, because as we look at our legacy, we are looking at the future of our family through our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. And I just wanted to point out, first of all, we just have 3 simple points today. The first one is that we build the culture in our family. We build the culture in our family. We're responsible for that. We influence and we create the culture in our family. Psalm 127, verses 1 through 5 are the primary passages we're looking at as we begin. Verse 1 in the English Standard Version just says, "Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain." Now, when I say we build the culture, we meaning you and the Lord. The Lord and I build the culture together, because hopefully you and I are committed to building a family culture where Jesus Christ is at the center of that culture. Is the culture in your family a culture where people flourish? Is it a culture that includes forgiveness, healthy ways to express conflict, resolution, and reconciliation? Do you have those dynamics built in and flourishing in your family that you are a part of? What are you cultivating in your family? Now, just understand, none of us are perfect here. None of us get it absolutely right. And God is much more interested in the culture that you are creating in your family than he is about you getting it right 100% of the time. He's more interested in the culture of your family than he is with perfection in your family. In this series, we've talked about creating a culture in your family of respect, love, mutual submission. Do you remember a couple weeks ago, we invited each of us to echo the statement, "What can I do to help?" and how we can lean into our family relationships and serve and bless and help each other through mutually submitting to each other, as Ephesians 5 teaches all of us to do, with a simple question, starting with a simple question: what can I do to help? Do you have a culture that navigates conflict in a healthy way. Last week when we spoke about conflict, we talked about one of the best, most surefire ways to reduce the temperature of a heated conflict that may be going on is by taking your finger and pointing it and saying, "Do you know what part of the problem is here?" And then turning that finger back toward us. "I'm not getting what I want." And how when we declare and accept responsibility for part of the problem is that I'm not getting what I want, because James teaches us that when we don't get what we want, quarrels and fights emerge. And that's the source of our conflict. That's a catalyst part of our conflict. And so when we're willing to say, "Hey, do you know what part of the problem is here? I am not getting what I want," it levels the playing field. It takes away some of our leverage, and it empowers our conversation to lower down in the amperage and begin dialoguing in a healthy way. Are we developing a culture in our family like this, where we experience resolution, where words that need to be spoken of correction are spoken in a life-giving and helpful and safe way, and where reconciliation is pursued? Now, at futurefamily.org, the fourth message in that series is all about reconciliation, and it's a masterpiece. So I would like to invite each of you to go to futurefamily.org and watch Andy Stanley's message on reconciliation, because it is powerful. He talks about how Christ's love compels us, and how when we reach a place where we say, "I just don't care anymore, I'm done," how if we don't acknowledge how deeply we care, that in 10, 20, 30 years, that notion of "I don't care anymore" will just come back and bite us and cost us much more in therapy decades later than if we deal with it and move toward reconciliation now. He talked about the importance of a father's approval and a husband's support, and how important it is to verbally affirm our children, our wives, those in our family, because husbands, fathers, your words have more power than you can possibly imagine. And oftentimes our default mode as husbands and fathers is just to offer disapproval all the time. And that does not lend toward healthy or good relationships. Are you able to love unconditionally, even when you disapprove of your child's behavior or choices or lifestyle? Are you able to love unconditionally? So I want to ask, who is your "I don't care" that you've given up on this notion of reconciliation? You create the culture in your family. Sorry about that cough. I am recovering from being sick last week, and I'm feeling great, but the cough lingers a little bit. Hey, Joshua declared his vision for his family and the culture that he was committed to having. In Joshua 24, verse 15, he says to the people of Israel, "Hey, if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." Joshua is declaring, the culture I am developing in my family will be a God-centered culture that honors Him. And so I want to invite us today to live a Christo-centered life in the culture of our family, where Christ, Christo is the Greek translation for the word Christ, where Christ is at the center of your relationships. And that's easy to say, but it takes intentional decisions on how to do it. So Leslie and I, when it came to our families and helping our kids and our family live a Christ-centered life, some of the decisions we made is that every year our children would go to Christian camp up at Whitehall Camp and Conference Center, where they would have 4 or 5 days of focused time with other kids their age, learning about and being invited to follow Christ and make Jesus the center of their lives. During that time, my oldest daughter sealed her commitment in her relationship with Christ by being baptized, and Christ is at the center of her lives. And each of our children, if you visit with them about the impact and influence of Whitehall Camp and Conference Center, youth camps in the summertime, and camp meeting in the fall, and winter blast in the winter, it will be a central part of their development. We decided to honor God in our lives by modeling that for our children, by choosing to respect both sets of our parents in very intentional ways, by being involved in the church and having that being normal, not just something we have to do, by putting Jesus at the center of our decisions, relationships, and finances. And we didn't always get it right, and we don't always get it right, but the commitment to that is there. Secondly, not only are we committed to building a Christ-centered culture in our family, but each of us are called to pursue a great cause in our family. What is it that you are giving your life to? I love the way Psalm 127 verse 2 continues. It says, "It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved sleep." Now, I love the way that the writer of this psalm is calling us to move away from anxious toil and really inviting us to find the calling in our lives that we can give our lives to through our employment, through what we do for a living. And so, culture that you create has to be heading somewhere. It's not just a mountaintop experience that it's windy, so I got to turn my sermon notes a specific way. There we go. We got them. But not only is a great culture that you're establishing in your family, but we are called to live for a great cause in our family. Or is your family just kind of spinning its wheels in anxious toil, not really clear on the cause that it's giving itself to? My grandparents and my parents created a cause in the life of our family that has played out in my grandparents' lives, in my parents' lives, in our lives, in my children's lives. My wife's grandparents lived with a cause in their life that has played out in her parents' lives and in her life and now in our children's life. And that cause was just simply living a life of ministry, serving, blessing, helping through ministering in our relationships, in our community, and in our church. Jesus created a culture that pursued a cause. The cause is the driving force in your family. If we don't have a driving force, a cause, then anybody and everybody's idea of what we should do as a family is up for grabs. But we're very committed in our family. For the past grandparents, parents, Leslie and our children, very clearly committed to the cause of living a life of ministry, of helping people find Jesus and follow him, helping people give their lives to him, have their sins forgiven, begin a relationship with him. I love the way Kent Chevalier, who's the chaplain for the Pittsburgh Steelers, posted on his Facebook page this week a quote by Gary Haugen, who serves on the International Justice Mission this week. And that quote that Gary has is, every human needs to figure out what they are running from, running to, and whys. I invite you to live with a God-honoring cause in your family. Hey, I want to give you a moment to take a deep breath, and I want to give myself a moment to get off the hood of this car and give my camera guy a moment not to be standing so close to the street on a very busy intersection. And I want to invite you to engage with this video that focuses on the third opportunity that we have to create a legacy via our children. And so I want to invite you to engage in this video just simply called Parenting a Holy Stewardship.
A holy stewardship, a precious opportunity, a divine calling, a parent. Parenting isn't just about babysitting and potty training. It's not just about teaching them to ride a bike or tie a shoe. It isn't just about making lunches and brushing teeth. Parenting is about changing the world. It's about reminding our kids who they really are, children of God, born for His glory. So parents, let's remember that the most important meetings of your day aren't in a conference room or on a stage, but at the dinner table and at the bedside. Let's remember that there's no quality time without quantity time. That the most valuable thing is not what you leave for them, but what you leave in them. That every time they fall down, you have the responsibility and the privilege of lifting them back up. Remember that your kids don't need you to be popular, productive, and certainly not perfect. They need you to be present. And remember that every time you wipe away the tear on their cheek, you're giving them a glimpse of the day when God Himself will wipe away every tear forever. The Bible tells us to train up a child in the way they should go, and even when they're old, they will not depart from it. So show them the way. Pray for their soul and give them your best, because God gave you to them.
Well, I hope that video gave you a glimpse of the potential that you have for your future family, for you to be able to pass on a legacy that echoes decades from when your life ends. So one of the challenges of filming here at Mogies on a Friday afternoon, late Friday afternoon, is, first of all, the position of the sun, because you can't have this camera coming into the sun. But also, there's just a lot of people and a lot going on. So we found this little nook to finish the last few minutes of this sermon, and thought you'd want to know. There you go. So the third thing that I want to invite you to do, not only am I inviting you to build a culture, a Christ-centered culture in your family, to pursue a great cause in your family, I'm inviting you to create a legacy. Create a legacy that gets passed on through you to your children and beyond. This Psalm 27, verses 3 through 5 say, "Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord." You saw that verse right at the end of the video we just watched. "The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate. Now, how about that ending sentence? His children's lives will not put him at risk, even when he's interacting with those who hate you. They won't be able to slam you because of your children. Andy and his wife Sandra share their parenting journey at futurefamily.org in the 5th sermon in this series. It's more of a conversation than a sermon itself, and I found what they shared to be so helpful and so good. I've already shared it with a young father that I'm friends with, and I want to share it with everybody. Leslie and I, our children are in their 20s now, and yet I found it to be affirming of some of the things that we got really right, and even some of the areas that we could have done better, that we want to make sure in our grandchildren's lives we play a more active role in one of those areas specifically. So in their talk, they talked about some goals they had as their family, and it helped me clarify on some goals that Leslie and I had with our family. And I've shared this with you before, that my number one priority for my children throughout their life is that they would grow up and love God and love others with all their heart. I wasn't concerned about what my children were going to do with their career. I wasn't concerned about what my children, where they were going to live. My number one goal in life for them was that they would grow up and love God with all their heart, and they would love others with all their heart. A second goal that Leslie and I kind of set intuitively. We didn't declare it as a goal, but looking back, we realized that so much of our energy and the way we lived our lives was built on wanting this to take place, and that is that we wanted our adult children, once they were grown, to enjoy each other and for them to want to be around home at the right opportunities. I noticed this about Leslie and her siblings around the holidays when we started dating and when we were first married. They just wanted to be together. It's all they wanted. And there would be times when one of us wasn't with them and the other siblings would be like, "Oh, where are you? We're all here. We're having a great time. We're having Gunny's wings. Where are you?" And they would rub it in that they weren't able to be home for that event. I know our second Christmas that we spent in December of 1998, we were down in Tupelo, Mississippi, and the way when Christmas fell during that time and where we were as a young family, I just said to Leslie, "Hey, we're not able to go home this Christmas. We're going to have to celebrate Christmas just as our family of 4 at that time." And it was the loneliest, most depressing Christmas we've ever had, because we called her house and all her siblings were like, "Where are you, Leslie? We're having a great time. We're eating, your mother's homemade hot fudge. We're eating the molasses pudding she makes. We're having a blast. Too bad you're not here." And I wanted that. I wanted to raise my children with that, where they really enjoyed each other and wanted to be with each other as adults and be around home, especially on those great times. Leslie and I made some decisions that helped us as parents as well. We made 2 decisions that I want to point out. First is Leslie and I made the decision that she and I were going to spend time away together, regardless of how much it cost or how hard it was to coordinate. With 4 children and being a pastor, we found that, and my wife being a teacher, we found that the 3rd weekend in January was a perfect time for us to get away on a Friday night, a Saturday night, or a Sunday night, and a Sunday night. We found that 3 days away at a hotel didn't have to be at an elaborate place, didn't have to be in warm weather. We like the cold weather in the wintertime. We just like to go and just be together. And so we made this a priority. And I know many couples that never take the time for this. And afterwards, she would say, "Thank you for making me," because I made her do it. "And thank you for making me have these 4 days and 3 nights away with just you because I remember how much I like you. She knew she loved me, but she would remember how much she likes me. And now that our children are in their 20s, Leslie and I sneak away for dates all the time. We went away for a couple nights between Christmas and New Year's this year in Baltimore. We had a great time, even though we were in Baltimore. So, we look for ways because we love each other. We enjoy each other. We truly do. And so that's one of the commitments we made. Another commitment we made as a family is not to overreact. We wanted our children to trust us with information, and we chose not to overreact as best as we could. I remember one time my son was, I think, in 9th grade or 10th grade, and it was a Friday night, and Leslie and I were home, and he liked that music that they played at his public school basketball games before they started, and just to get amped up and hyped up. And so we said, "Son, why don't you play us the music on your playlist?" And he was terrified to. I'm like, "No, we want to hear it. We want to better understand it. We want to learn to appreciate it." And so for over 2 hours, we sat on the back porch and listened to his rap music. And Leslie, I could tell her blood was curling. It was like, but she was calm. She's like, "Oh, that's a very interesting set of lyrics. Oh, wow, that's a great rhythm. Oh, that's an interesting message. Oh, wow, that's..." And but what that did was it built trust and built our hearts together. And my son knew that even though we're not crazy about the kind of music he was drawn toward at that stage in his life, that we loved him more than anything else. So those were 2 of the decisions that we made in parenting that we found to be helpful. Now, I know some of us, when we heard children, we just shut down because we don't have children. We can't have children. Or things did not go well with our children. Or perhaps we're in the middle of infertility right now and we're not sure if we'll ever have them. And children is a very emotional thing to talk about and think about during this time. And that's one of the things we said at the very beginning of this sermon series, is that family is emotional. Father, brother, sister, mother, child are very emotional terms. And so I just want to speak to those of us that feel like we don't have anything to pass on because we don't have any children. You don't have to have children to create a great culture and live with a great cause that can be passed on as a legacy. We all have people that we invest in and are called to give our lives to. We all have influence in some way that we can impact the next generation. And so I want to invite you to not give up. If you don't have any biological children, and say, I don't have anybody I can pass this legacy on to. Hey, at the River, we are revamping our entire children's ministry, and we are looking for people just like you who are willing to dedicate an hour of their week to speak into, to walk alongside, to be with our children in our children's ministry, to give them someone that they can be safe around and sense the love of Jesus through. And so we want to invite you to consider investing in the lives of the children that come to the River on Sunday morning or Wednesday night and help pass on a legacy to them. In 3 John, the author John, who we have no record of him having children of his own, he says these words: "I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth." He understood the spiritual family that we are a part of, and the lives of the people that he invests in are spiritual children that he is creating a legacy in. What lives beyond you? Who are you invested in? Who are you leaving a legacy for? There's a powerful story in the Old Testament that maybe many of you are familiar with Jacob and Esau, where Jacob steals the blessing from his father that belongs to Esau. And Jacob leaves because he knows his brother Esau is going to kill him if he stays. They were twin brothers, but Esau was older by just a few minutes. And so Jacob went away. He was gone for a couple decades, and God blessed him, and he married, and he had children and children and children, 11 children by this time. And he was returning home to meet Esau, who he had had no contact with for 20 years or more. And Joseph, his son, watched as Esau and Jacob came together. And Jacob bowed in respect to his older brother Esau. And Esau, who came to meet them with 400 warriors, chose not to murder his brother, but to engulf him with an embrace. Joseph watched this action by his uncle Esau. And now I want to invite you to fast forward decades ahead, when Jacob is forgiven by his brother Esau, and Joseph saw it as a teenager. Shortly after that time, Joseph gets betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and ends up in Egypt. And decades later, he is now at the most powerful position in Egypt, second to the Pharaoh. And through a unique set of circumstances, his 10 brothers that betrayed him and sold him into slavery are standing in front of him, and they don't even know it's him. And he has the power to take their lives. And Joseph forgives them. Joseph embraces them in one of the most moving scenes in all of the narratives of the Old Testament. We see Joseph living out the legacy that he first saw introduced through his uncle Esau. That legacy was passed on. And so I want to invite you to never underestimate the power of the legacy that you pass on to your children, to your grandchildren, to those who are not your biological children who are looking at you. Never underestimate the legacy that you get to pass on, because that legacy is the echo that lasts beyond you. God bless you, everybody. Thank you for joining in on this 4-week series called Future Family. And I pray that God blesses you and gives you the desires of your heart. God bless. Thanks, guys.